The morning of October 4th, 2017 held a calm in the air. I could feel it in my bones, though. An unease that was hard to put into words. We were a team of U.S. Special Forces operators, alongside our partners from the Nigerian Security and Intelligence Battalion and Special Interdiction Unit. We were on a mission, but little did we know, it wasn't going to be just another day in the field. It all began 2 days prior, on October 2nd, when we received high-value intelligence about an ISGS subcommander in our area of responsibility. The mission plan was simple on paper. Locate and capture, or, if necessary, kill the ISGS subcommander. We set out early on October 3rd. The plan we submitted didn't fully reveal our objective. On paper, it was a civil/military reconnaissance mission, but in reality, it was much more than that. But as we headed out on October 4th, things felt different. There was a sensation of impending danger. As we rolled out of the base, we were unaware of the firestorm we were about to step into. And that's when it happened. We were still in the grips of the early morning chill when we reached Toloa, the location where the ISGS commander was last reported to be. The town was eerily silent. Our intelligence had placed the ISGS commander in the area, and we had come prepared to confront him. After a thorough search, he was nowhere to be found. As the sun rose higher and the shadows of the morning retreated, we decided to begin our return journey to the base. The mission had been unsuccessful. However, as we were more than halfway back to base, a sudden update disrupted. New intelligence had come in, placing the ISGS commander near the border of Mali. We were back in the game. The original mission plan had involved a helicopter team that was supposed to be the primary force, with us serving as the quick reaction force. But due to unfavorable weather conditions, the helicopter team had to cancel their mission. This left us, Team Qualum, to continue on our own. We pressed on. Our journey north was met with the first light of dawn as we reached our new objective, which the officials referred to as Objective North. We searched the area and found enemy rations, uniforms, and a motorcycle. Partner Nigerian soldiers destroyed these items, but before we could return to base, our team commander ordered an overhead ISR asset to continue monitoring the area. We wanted to gather intelligence on possible enemy routes leading into Mali. This decision, unknown to us at the time, would leave us exposed as we moved towards our next stop, the village of Tongo Tongo. After the destruction of the enemy items at Objective North, a sense of accomplishment fell over us. Despite the initial hiccup in our mission, we had not captured or killed the ISGS commander. Our next order was clear, return to base, but our team commander had other plans. Before we started our journey back, he ordered an overhead ISR asset to continue monitoring Objective North. The goal was to gather intelligence on potential enemy routes into Mali. It was a logical move, a way to capitalize on the momentum of our mission. Tongo Tongo was not originally part of our itinerary, but the detour was necessary. As the sun rose higher, we made our way to the village, the silence only broken by the hum of our vehicle engines and the occasional chatter over the radio. At 8:30 a.m. local time, we departed Objective North and set course for Tongo Tongo. We moved in convoy, a line of dust trailing behind us. As we neared the village, the reality of what lay ahead began to sink in. We were heading into potential hostile territory. We didn't know it then, but Tongo Tongo would prove to be more than just another stop. It was 10:30 a.m. local time when we pulled into the village, the convoy kicking up a cloud of dust that hung in the air for a moment before settling back onto the dirt roads. We were there to replenish supplies and rest, but our commander had another agenda. He had arranged a meeting with the local leaders. These meetings were routine, a chance to build trust and gather information. We split into two groups, one to guard the vehicles while the rest of us attended the meeting. The local leaders greeted us with wary smiles, their eyes betraying an undercurrent of tension. The meeting began, but soon it was clear that something was wrong. The local leaders seemed to be dragging the meeting out longer than expected. Our suspicions were further aroused when two motorcycles raced out of the village. It was as if they were carrying a message, an urgent warning. Something was definitely wrong. The meeting finally ended, but the sense of unease lingered. As we walked back to the rest of the unit, the villagers, who had been going about their daily routines, now stood silent, their eyes following our every move. The village of Tongo Tongo, which we had thought of as just another stop, was turning out to be a pit of potential danger. We had come to rest and resupply, but what we got instead was suspicion and unease. Little did we know that these were the antecedents to a much greater threat. We left the village at 11:35 a.m., the convoy once again stirring up a thick cloud of dust. The 8 vehicles moved in a tight formation, a mobile fortress of metal and manpower. We were all on high alert, the earlier events in the village lingering at the back of our minds. The unease had settled in, a silent passenger on our journey back to base. As the convoy moved, the landscape around us seemed to come alive. The trees that lined the path were no longer just trees, but potential hiding spots. The distant sound of a goat bleating wasn't just a part of rural life, but a potential warning signal. Approximately 100 meters outside of the village, the reality of our worst fears outspread. A hail of bullets erupted from the surrounding tree line, and the crack of gunfire filled the air. The ambush had begun. The militants, believed to be led by Dondu Shefu, a lieutenant in the terrorist group ISGS, attacked from the rear. They came in a dozen technicals and about 20 motorcycles, armed with small arms, vehicle-mounted heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and mortars. They had let us pass through what was now clearly a kill zone, trapping us from the rear. As the first bullets whizzed past, the convoy halted. Our training kicked in instantly. We returned fire, the staccato burst from our M240 machine guns echoing across the open terrain. The rest of us dismounted from the vehicles, donned protective equipment, and began to exchange small arms fire. The battle had just begun, and already the odds seemed stacked against us. But we were United States Special Forces. We were trained for situations like this, trained to fight against all odds. We would not go down without a fight. The battlefield was chaotic. In that chaos, we found a grim determination, a resolve to protect our own and make it back home. But as we fought, it was clear that we were up against a force larger than what we had initially thought. As the enemy kept advancing, we started realizing that this was more than a random attack. This was a well-planned, well-executed ambush, and we were right in the middle of it. In the midst of the chaos, the team leader and 4 Nigerian soldiers broke off, aiming to flank what we thought was a small enemy force. The rest of us stayed put, holding our positions and continuing to return fire. The roar of gunfire and the sharp whistle of bullets passing close by created a cacophony that filled the air, masking any other sound. Meanwhile, the team sergeant ordered the rear U.S. vehicle to the middle of the convoy to better coordinate machine gun fire. It was around this time that we noticed the rear Nigerian vehicle had left the area via an unknown route. The absence of one of our vehicles did nothing to bolster our morale, but we pushed on, refusing to let fear overtake us. As the team leader and the Nigerian soldiers continued their flanking movement, they were halted by a body of water. From there, they identified and engaged the enemy across the water, killing approximately 4 combatants. But just as they were making headway, they saw a larger enemy force moving in from the east, armed men on motorcycles and vehicles with mounted machine guns. Seeing the larger enemy force, the team leader quickly returned to the halted convoy and ordered us to head south to prevent getting outflanked. We were now not only in a fight for our lives, but also in a race against time, trying to escape the tightening trap of enemy forces. As we moved out of the ambush site, we managed to take down several enemies. The first vehicle to depart were the Nigerians, followed by ours. As we began our movement south, one of our team members threw a smoke grenade to conceal our escape. The last we saw of Staff Sergeant Brian Black, Jeremiah Johnson, and Dustin Wright. They were taking cover behind our unarmored SUV. Wright was in the driver's seat, slowly moving south, while Black and Johnson ran alongside, providing suppressive fire at the enemy. The scene was a mix of controlled chaos and calculated moves. As a unit, we were trained to respond to such situations, but the reality of it was harsher, more unforgiving. Every second mattered. Every move could be the difference between life and death. As they tried to maneuver out of the kill zone, Black found cover behind a tree while Johnson continued to fire from the hood of the SUV. Suddenly, Johnson fell, exposed to the incoming enemy fire. Wright immediately reversed the SUV in an attempt to shield him. With Johnson down and under heavy enemy fire, a feeling of helplessness swept over the team. Despite the perilous situation, they persevered, pressing forward amidst the chaos, determined not to let their comrades' sacrifice be in vain. As the ambush unfolded, Wright got into the SUV and began to slowly drive south while Black and Jeremiah Johnson ran alongside, providing suppressive fire at the enemy while under heavy fire themselves. After passing the colored smoke, Black ran and took cover behind a nearby tree while Jeremiah Johnson fired over the hood of the vehicle towards the tree line. In the midst of their movements towards the south under fire, Jeremiah Johnson fell to the ground, leaving him exposed to enemy fire. Wright immediately backed up. The incident resulted in the deaths of 4 Nigerians, 4 U.S. soldiers, and at least 21 ISGS militants, with 8 Nigerians and 2 U.S. soldiers being wounded. This ambush remains the largest loss of American lives in combat in Africa since the Battle of Mogadishu in 1993. The immediate aftermath of the ambush sparked political debate over the presence of U.S. forces in Africa and shed light on previously underreported U.S. military activities in the region. An investigation conducted by the U.S. Department of Defense found that the 11-member U.S. Special Forces team was not adequately prepared for the mission, which identified other flaws in planning.